Hey everyone, and welcome back. You know we love to do deep dives on this show, and today we're tackling a topic that you specifically requested, mental health.
I'm excited to dive in.
Me too. We're going to be looking at this text called Mental Health, an Introductory Discussion and Guide. And I think it's perfect timing, because we always talk about physical health,
Right.
but mental health is just as important.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like the other half of the equation.
It really is.
But what does it actually mean to be mentally healthy?
That's the question.
It's got to be more than just not being mentally ill, right?
Yeah, it absolutely is more than that. It's more like, think of a tree that's thriving out in a forest. It's not just the absence of disease. It's about having strong roots,
Right.
being able to weather storms,
Yeah.
and to keep growing. And that's kind of what mental health is. It's like this emotional, psychological, and social well-being all intertwined.
So it's like having that inner strength to deal with all of life's craziness.
Exactly. It affects how you handle stress, how you connect with others, even how you make decisions when things get tough.
Speaking of stress, the text talks about how fast-paced everything is these days.
Right.
Does that make it even harder to, stay mentally healthy? I mean, we're constantly bombarded with information.
All the time.
Deadlines, everything. It's enough to make anyone's head spin.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It definitely adds, a whole other layer of challenge to it. And actually, the text calls out some of the big ones that we're talking about. Stress, anxiety, depression, loneliness, even sleep problems.
Right.
These aren't just like little annoyances. They can really throw a wrench in your overall well-being.
Yeah, those are the big names, but what do they actually look like in real life?
Yeah, like imagine feeling constantly on edge about work deadlines. Or maybe you're lying in bed, but your mind is just racing, thinking about all the things you need to do. Or picture this. You're surrounded by people, but still feeling utterly alone. It's like carrying around this invisible weight day after day.
Yeah, it's almost like we've accepted those feelings as normal, but it sounds like the first step is just realizing that these aren't just part of modern life.
Yeah,
They're actually issues that need to be addressed.
totally. You hit the nail on the head.
Right.
And that brings us to kind of the elephant in the room, which is the stigma surrounding mental health.
Oh, tell me about it. It's like there's this unspoken rule that we just don't talk about it.
Right.
Admitting you're struggling is seen as this weakness, like it's something to be ashamed of.
Right, and that's exactly the kind of thinking that we need to change. It's like telling someone with a broken leg to just walk it off.
Yeah.
The source actually calls out some of these common stigmas, and they are kind of alarming. Things like mental illness only affecting weak people, or the idea that you can just snap out of it, or that therapy is something to be ashamed of.
Oh, right.
These beliefs are not only untrue, they're incredibly damaging.
It's like telling people to ignore a broken leg A&D, be ashamed of getting a cast.
Exactly.
Yeah, it makes zero sense.
But unfortunately, those beliefs persist.
Yeah.
And they have very real consequences. People suffer in silence, feeling isolated and ashamed, and very often their struggles just get worse without the right support.
So how do we flip the script then? The source mentions some practical steps for actually taking care of our mental health, and I'm really curious about those.
Yeah.
It's great to talk about the problems, but having some actionable advice
Yeah, for sure.
would be a game changer.
You're spot on. I mean, knowledge is power, right? So knowing how no-be-do to actually take care of your mental well-being
Yeah.
is essential. And the source breaks it down into a few key strategies. All are backed by research and what actually works in the real world. And the most basic one, sometimes the hardest one, is simply talking it out.
Okay, that sounds simple enough, but I'm guessing it's more than just venting to anyone who will listen.
You're catching on quickly. It's about confiding in people you trust. Friends, family, a mentor, maybe a support group. Sharing your experiences with someone who listens without judgment can be incredibly validating. It helps you to process your emotions, gain some perspective, and realize you're not alone in this. Plus, it opens the door to getting practical support and encouragement.
So it's like finding your tribe.
Yes.
The people who get it.
Exactly.
And who can just be there for you. Now, what about those other strategies?
Well, the source really emphasizes healthy habits. And I think we all know that exercise, eating well, getting enough sleep, it's all good for our bodies.
Right.
But their impact on our minds is equally profound.
I've always wondered about that. It's not just about feeling good physically, but these habits actually affect how our brains work.
It's like this chain reaction. Think about it this way. When you exercise regularly, your brain releases these things called endorphins, which have this mood-boosting effect.
Mhm.
And when you eat a balanced diet, you're giving your brain the nutrients it needs to function at its best.
Yeah,
And then there's sleep.
right.
It's like hitting the reset button for your mind and body. It allows you to process emotions and to think more clearly.
So taking care of the physical stuff kind of sets the stage for a healthier mind.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, the source also mentions mindfulness,
Yes.
and that's something I'm personally interested in. I've heard a lot about it, but I'll admit I've always been a little skeptical, like, does it really live up to the hype?
Mindfulness, it isn't some, magic cure-all, but there's actually a lot of scientific evidence showing that it can be really effective.
Okay.
Studies have shown that practicing mindfulness, whether it's meditation or yoga, or even just some deep breathing exercises, can reduce stress, anxiety, symptoms of depression. It's all about training your mind to focus on the present moment instead of getting caught up in worries about the past or anxieties about the future.
So it's like a mental workout for building resilience,
Exactly.
which we all need in this crazy, fast-paced world.
Yes, we do. And finally, the source talks about seeking professional help when you need it. Therapists and counselors are trained to help us understand and address the root causes of our mental health challenges.
And this is where that stigma we talked about earlier really comes into play.
Yes.
There's this idea that going to therapy means you're somehow broken,
Right.
or you can't handle things on your own.
Right, and that couldn't be further from the truth. Seeking professional help is actually a sign of strength and self-awareness.
Okay.
It's like going to the doctor when you have a physical problem.
Yeah.
Just like you wouldn't hesitate to get treatment for a broken bone, you shouldn't hesitate to seek support for your mental well-being. Therapists can offer evidence-based treatments, coping strategies, and a safe space to process those difficult emotions.
It's like acknowledging that we all need a little help sometimes.
Yes.
And there's no shame in reaching out.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it. It's about realizing that we're not meant to go through this alone. And, that brings us to a really important point, which is the role we all play in making it easier to talk about mental health.
I love this idea. It's like we need a social movement for mental well-being. We need to break down those stigmas
Yes.
and create a culture where people feel comfortable talking about their struggles and seeking help without, without fear of judgment.
You're getting it. It's about shifting those societal attitudes, promoting understanding, and advocating for policies and resources that support mental health care.
Okay.
And here's the best part. Every single one of us can be part of that change.
That's inspiring, but it also sounds like a massive undertaking.
Yeah.
Where do we even begin?
It starts with those everyday actions in our own lives. The source challenges us to be advocates in our own circles. Lend a listening ear to someone who's struggling. Maybe share your own experiences to help normalize these conversations. Encourage people to seek professional help when they need it. And most importantly, be kind to yourself and prioritize your own mental well-being.
So it's not about grand gestures. It's about those little things that can have a ripple effect.
Exactly. It's about creating a web of support, one conversation, one act of kindness at a time.
Okay, so we talked about these individual steps, but what about that bigger picture? The collective action part.
Yeah.
How do we start to shift those societal attitudes and advocate for better mental health care?
One of the most powerful things we can do is simply talk about it.
Okay.
Share your own experiences, whether it's with friends, family, even on social media. The more we normalize these conversations, the less power those stigmas have.
So it's about being vulnerable,
Yeah.
sharing our stories,
Yes.
so other people don't feel so alone.
Exactly. And we could also educate ourselves.
Right.
There's a ton of information available online, in libraries.
Yeah.
The more we understand about mental health, the better equipped we are to challenge those misconceptions and advocate for change.
Knowledge is power, as they say.
It really is. And we can also support organizations that are working to improve mental health care access and reduce stigma. Donate, volunteer, spread the word about their work. Every little bit helps.
So it's about using our voices, our actions, and our resources to create a world where mental health is treated with the same importance as physical health.
You got it. And remember, change doesn't happen overnight. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But every step we take, every conversation we have, every act of kindness we extend can make a difference.
I'm really loving this idea of collective action. It's not just about taking care of ourselves, but it's about creating a more supportive and compassionate world for everyone.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together and that by supporting each other, we can all thrive.
Speaking of supporting each other, the source also talks about